to read a statement that coming out of executive session.
And this is for both the press and the public who are here tonight. On Tuesday, September 25th, an incident took place in the varsity football team's locker room prior to practice. This incident was brought to the attention of administration at Torrington High School on Wednesday, September 26th. Administration immediately began an investigation of the incident, found specific protocol recommended by the Connecticut State Department of Education, which included the following: interviewing the head coach, several players, and other students believed to have information regarding the incident, meeting with parents, reporting to the police department, and submitting a completed report to the superintendent within 5 days. On Thursday, September 26th, it was determined that 4 varsity players would be suspended from school beginning Friday, September 27th for 5 days and would be suspended from the team for 2 games. The suspensions would also become part of their permanent school record and be noted on their school transcripts required for college applications. The investigation conducted by the THS administration was thorough and fair. Coaches were given specific directions to speak to the students once again, as they had done at the beginning of the school year, regarding proper conduct of an athlete on and off the field, and review the THS student handbook and CIAC regulations regarding hazing and bullying. Since the decision was executed, further information has been brought forth regarding behaviors of those associated with the varsity football team, and an outside investigation by 2 agencies is currently being conducted. The purpose of athletics at Torrington High School is to provide students with the opportunity to work together to achieve a common goal while involved in a sport that they enjoy and that provides opportunity for physical movement. Athletics provides students with an opportunity to demonstrate not only physical prowess but leadership ability. When character development of a group of athletes takes a nosedive in the sports arena, the adults responsible for the program must step in and ask why. That is what will occur.
Thank you. Okay, item 4, school community session, public participation. The board invites members of the community to speak on topics to be addressed in the agenda or on other topics of interest. Individuals wishing to make comment are requested to fill out the speaker sign-up sheet, including name and address, which must be stated at the beginning of your comment. The board will not allow comments regarding specific staff members or personal grievances. Courtesy is expected in this limited public forum. The participating time will be limited to 3 minutes per person and 10 minutes overall to guarantee the efficient operation of the entire meeting. We have 1 signee. Bruno.
I just wanted to say that for item 8, executive session for member conduct, I was hoping you can cite the exemption for that. And also, I just wanted to say that I felt that an issue with the member Board of Ed should be dealt in public session so that the public can get information relating to that issue. That's all.
Okay. Number 5, approval of the minutes. Special Board of Education meeting on September 14th. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes? So moved. By Mr. Kisco, second by Ellen. All those in favor? All those in favor is Mr. Kisco, Mrs. Hona, Mrs. Capabianca, Mr. Traub. Abstentions would be Rivero, Marola, Nargi, Thibault, and Cavanaugh. Okay, approval of minutes for Board of Education meeting on September 19th. Motion to approve by Daniel, second by Fiona. All those in favor? All right. All those in favor, those abstentions would be Mr. Marola and Mr. Rivero because they were not present. Okay, going to informational sharing and discussion items. The superintendent report.
Good
We did the recognitions.
For the mayor, I just want to talk about our high school marching band, THS High School Marching Band. We're very busy during the first 2 months of school, and they received first place Best Appearing High School Band in the North Adams, Massachusetts Fall Foliage Parade. And there they had to compete with bands from Massachusetts, New York, Vermont, and other towns in Connecticut. They also received first place for Best Appearing High School Band in the Bristol Mums Parade. And the THS Jazz Ensemble received the gold medal at the Enrico Fermi High School Jazz Festival. So, definitely well done.
Okay, moving on to our presentation on special education. Everybody received that in a folder at your chair. It was not in the original packet. Also in the folder at your chair, in the envelope like you have in your hand, Paul, that's updates to board policies to go in your binder that you got. In the manila regular folder in the clip next to you is the special ed presentation, this one.
Hi there. You've asked a lot of questions. Is there any particular place you want me to start?
Take it right from the top. It was the board's interest was in the staffing model and the way cases are brought in and processed. Set in placement.
Okay. Yep.
Good.
So, what you have in your packet is a breakout over the last 3 years for special education, and we broke down the numbers of children who are outplaced by those done by DCF, Court, the LEA, which is our local education association, us, and parents. Parents include the children who also go to places like Wamoco, Bristol, Tappan, some of the Explorations is the other school. As you can see from our numbers have gone down. We've done a really nice job getting fewer kids outplaced. We went in 2010, 2011, the LEA had 86 children outplaced. As of October 1st this year, we are down to 65. As I've explained in the past, these are moving, shifting numbers. They can change daily, weekly, monthly. So all of this information is snapshot information based on what's been going on. Your first long sheet is for this particular present school year. The totals are for July, August, and September, and we do July and August because we have children who attend summer school in the outplacements. The costs are pretty close to what's accurate. Some of the schools have not told us what our actual costs are going to be. They have to wait for the state to set the rates, and some of the out-of-state schools have just set their rates, so they've sent us letters saying that some of the costs are going up. We anticipate about a 3% rise in tuition costs per year overall. With what we're looking at right now with our LEA placements, we are projecting that our LEA placements will come in around $5 million. But that too is a moving target. It goes up, it goes down, depends on kids coming back into district, children moving out, DCF pulling children out and putting them someplace else. So again, this is a snapshot of where we are. At the top, you also see what our, how that breaks out. The second page is the breakout of the transportation costs. do get some reimbursement from DCF if they place a child in a town. What we can do is we can bill them for the difference between what it costs us to transport a child from Torrington to the outplacement school versus what it might cost, for instance, if a child is placed in Danbury. So they would pay the difference. But that just gives you a general idea of how much it costs us to transport children to each one of these outplacement schools. The second set is for 2011-2012, and it's the same scenario. These numbers are based on end-of-the-year costs. And again, it's broken out, DCF, court, LEA, and parent. And the second page there is the transportation cost for 2011-2012. Once again, the LEA is the Local Education Association, which is us. And the third sheet is for 2010-2011. Do you have any questions about this information? Yes, sir.
First question I have is, it's October 1 counts for SC, DAC, and Power School. I think it was the second page of your handout. I don't understand. It says total OOD, for example, 2010, 2011 was 120, but total district is 849. What's the total?
Okay, the total number of special education students identified by the district is 849. Out of that 849, 120 were outplaced.
And then,
No, that was 2010, 2011.
and then the second question I have is, these DCF/court appointments, are they our students in the sense that the reason why they were in court or a DCF/matter, they did something that was on school grounds, or
No.
they could, or it's
No.
just something totally different?
Correct. DCF is generally, the children have been taken out of their home for their protection.
And then they go to the court to get?
No, it's separate. The court are the children who are involved because of criminal acts or because of lack of attendance in school, that sort of thing. DCF is involved for child protection. And so they get involved with the families, and depending on whether the child needs to be in a safe home or a group home or a foster home, they make those placements.
Something that is always, I mean, I just hear it constantly from either teachers or parents, are students that are constantly troublesome in the school, and they want to know why this student who is constantly causing trouble, does that child necessarily fit into the special ed classification, or is that something totally different? The kid could be just a perfectly so-called normal student, not a special ed kid, but he has a continuing problem with discipline and behavior. How often?
That does not necessarily trigger special education.
But how often does that type of behavior trigger special ed?
It really depends on what the root cause of it is. If it's oppositional defiance or conduct disorder, neither one of those fits underneath the special education umbrella. If it's something that has a root cause because there's a significant emotional disturbance, then the child would be special ed.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is a lot of information for us to go through. questions on short notice. Is there any way we can hear the presentation and put this on the agenda for questions next month after we've had time to read through all this?
We definitely can. Would that be,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, okay.
Okay,
You want to continue forward then? Beth?
absolutely. After these long sheets, in answer to another question that was presented to me about the history of the administration and the breakout of what's happened since I came, which was in 2004, 9 years ago. When I arrived, we had a director of special education and we had 3 special education supervisors. We were all on the administrative level. In 2006, there was a reconfiguration of what we covered, but there still were 3 supervisors and a director. In 2007, we had the 3 supervisors, and then Mrs. Klacko was made a principal on a special assignment, and she took over the programs of ELL, early childhood, gifted, homeless, and became the test coordinator for the district. In 2008, one of the supervisor positions was eliminated, and that left us with 2 special education supervisors and a director, and Mrs. Klacko continued in her special position. In 2009, the director needed to take a leave, and she left in February, and there was no replacement, and therefore the 2 supervisors not only conducted their jobs, we also took on the responsibilities of the director, and Mrs. Klacko was made director of special programs at that point. In 2010, I was made the director of special education, and we had an assistant director of special education, and Mrs. Klacko continued in her position as director of special programs. To help us out, a non-administrative position was put into place to help with outplacement PPTs and the pre-K. 2011 to present, we have 1 administrator left in my department, and Mrs. Klacko's programs that she was working on were absorbed into her position as the acting and now superintendent of schools. As a result, we've gone from 4 administrators in 2006 to 1 in 2011-12 and 12-13. And the principals have taken on the responsibility of the supervision of the special education people in their buildings, with the exception that I, as the director, supervise all of the district-wide people, all of the pre-K people, and I, the OTs, the PTs, and I also take care of some of the co-supervision of some of the teachers that are new in the district in their respective schools. The next handout is your tri-colored one. I did again, went through the 3 years and tried to give you a snapshot of how many special ed teachers, paras that are general. When I say general, I mean special ed paras that do classroom support or one-on-one. I included the paras that we have in the schools for bilingual, the media para, how many psychologists, social workers, speech and language people, and OT and PT are split amongst all the schools. They provide service as needed. So this gives you just an idea of how the staffing has gone over the last 3 years. The question came up about the types of special education meetings. Public Act 12173 was adopted this past summer, it added another meeting to our wonderful schedule of meetings. We now are required to inform parents that they have a right to have a meeting before a initial pre-referral meeting. At those meetings, a PPS staff person is to meet with a parent, explain to the parent their rights as parents seeking special education services for their children, and also to explain special education procedures. Also part of that law, we have now been required to post or to make available to parents the IEP manual that is given to the special ed teachers, and it shows them how to fill out the IEP forms accurately. We have to give them the parent guide to special education, and for the secondary level, we have to provide them with the guide for transition. What we have done is we have posted this on our website with direct links to those guides. There's a letter that now goes out to parents that informs them that they can have a pre-referral meeting, that they can get these guides, and also that they can get copies of all of their child's eligibility assessment reports 3 days before an eligibility meeting. First actual special ed meeting is the referral PPT. Referrals can come in from just about anywhere. They can come from school staff, parents, doctors, whatever. At those meetings, at the top you can see who has to be at those meetings. And so you need to have a complete group of people that are involved, a regular teacher, special ed teacher, a PPS person, which includes either a speech and language, social worker, psychologist, OT, PT, somebody in those areas. At least one has to be at the meeting. The administrator or the administrative designee has to be there, and of course the parent. At that time we talk about what the concerns are for the student, and we decide whether the student needs an evaluation. If they do, as a team, we decide what types of evaluations we're going to do. And we have 45 school days from the time we have received the referral to the time that we have to have an eligibility meeting. So usually what that means now is we have about 35 days to get the testing done. Once the testing is done, we have to have an eligibility meeting. At that time, all the assessments that were completed are reviewed, and the team decides whether or not the child does, in fact, need special education services. They develop a plan to provide those services. They develop goals and objectives that the child will be working on, and they assign the services to appropriate staff people. Program reviews are another type of PPT that we can have. Parents have the right to ask for a program PPT anytime and multiple times through the school year. And it's a way for them to touch base if they want changes, if they want services added, if the district feels a student has reached a level where we can exit them from services. We can do that at a program review PPT. Annual reviews. Every SPED child who is mandated needing services has to have at least one meeting a year. That's the annual review meeting, and that is to review progress and revise IEP goals and objectives. Triennial review. We are mandated every 3 years to do a total, complete reevaluation of a special education student. It is to determine whether the child is still eligible for special education under the category that they were initially identified under, or whether we have to change that, and whether or not the programming that they're receiving is appropriate, and make changes as needed. The next is a manifestation meeting. These are done for children who are presenting with behavioral issues. We have to determine whether the behavioral issues that they are exhibiting are related to their disability or not. We are not allowed to suspend children for behaviors that are related to their disability. We need to do a functional behavioral assessment to find out what is triggering the negative behavior, and then we have to develop behavioral intervention plans. If the child has already had that done within a school year, we need to either decide that we need to do a new one, or we have to change the behavioral intervention plan. We do intake PPTs, children who move into the district from other states, towns, whatever, who already are coming to us with IEPs. We need to have a meeting to intake that child into the district, determine whether we can provide the services on that IEP or whether we have comparable services, and how are we going to deliver that to the students. Exit PPTs. Exit PPTs are for students who are graduating or aging out. We need to review their progress. We need to fill out a summary of performance that is multiple pages, talks to the skill levels of the child, what the child's interests are, what's been put in place if they're 18 to 21 for vocational skills, that sort of thing, what agency is going to step in and help them if they need agency help, etc. PPTs with other Nexus districts. Frequently, speaking of DCF, they will place a child either in a group home or a foster home here in Torrington. Torrington is not the Nexus. The home school district is the Nexus. But we have to meet with them. We have to determine what they want, what services they want for that child. And we have to inform them that they will be paying a certain amount of money for those services. And we bill those school districts for the services we provide in the district. That's my life. Yes, sir.
Just wondering, Dr. Robin, if you can speak a little bit to how the process of these meetings work when a child is placed in another district, for example, say Wamogo or Region 1. You have all of these people. Now you're going to have administrators from our district, staff from their districts, et cetera, et cetera. Who trumps? What happens?
There's no trumping. Basically, for instance, we just recently had a meeting with a child who's in another district, and so two of members from our district from the school level went to that meeting, and the principal and myself were on the phone for that meeting. So we will do it that way sometimes. Susan Westfall will do many of those meetings, or Crystal Doyle will do the high school. Crystal covers, she covers CJR, she covers the children at Highlander, she covers the children at Lark, and she sometimes helps out with the children at Explorations. So
I'm just wondering how you can curb the effects of perhaps overzealous school district. I mean, you say you're placing them in, I'll just use Wamogo because it's on here.
Mm-hmm.
And Wamogo is this feeder school, and parents find out, you know, you send your kid there and they identify all of these special services, and we get to foot the bill for that. And then you have parents, you know, lining up to send their children. How do we make sure as a district that that doesn't happen?
it has to be a team decision, and we are part of the team, and we have to agree. And you know, we're very careful to monitor what's being asked for, and we make sure that the evaluations that are done, like for Mogo, we have to do the evaluations, they don't do them. So I have to send staff people there to do the evaluations. So we have to make sure that whatever data we collect on our evaluations supports what they're asking for. And if it doesn't, then we say no. It's as simple as that.
Just
Mhm.
one question is, how much time between a child coming forward, doing the pre-referral, you know, and all the meetings, the testing, and then before a child is either found eligible or ineligible? How much time would you consider that takes?
Well, the
Among
actual
staff.
I mean, for the staff?
Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't even begin to measure it. I mean, PBT meetings can go anywhere from a half an hour. I have sat in PBT meetings for 3.5 hours. Depends on the situation, depends on the parent, depends on the child's disability. Typically, PBT meetings go for about an hour. If it's an eligibility meeting, it can go as long as an hour and a half. If it's a triennial, it can be upwards of that because you're going through a whole nother set of evaluations that have been done.
And this is a process that involves 800 and,
Well, for instance, last year we had 96 referrals for preschool. Every single one of them had at least 2 meetings.
so you're doing these things for basically a fifth of the student body.
It's a lot of time.
Beth, on your staffing chart, one of the things that I know I was hoping for was to see your whole staff. Because I know you have an in-district coordinator, I know that's not the right title, and you have an
Yes,
out-of-district.
no, it is. We have an in-district coordinator.
You have an
and
out-of-district coordinator.
But neither one of them is an administrator. And
I
that's-
understand that, but
Okay.
if you could give us, well, they're doing the job of these PPTs and attending these meetings, so if we could see the whole staff, because I know you're not in there by yourself.
It's here.
It's
They're
on
on
the
the
staffing.
The in-district and out-of-district coordinator are in there?
Or in the bottom, yeah, on the right side. Oh, right here. But this is the whole staff.
What should have been on the list? Do you have, I don't see it anywhere here, but the number of identified students by building?
I don't have it in your handout.
No, this is in the agenda, because the packet that was sent out, that's what was not in.
Would we be able to get
Staffing
that
report that's
information?
someplace later.
How many
in the
students per
agenda.
school?
How many are identified?
Each
Per
school?
building?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just have one question.
Sure.
And it doesn't necessarily have to do specifically with Torrington's special ed situation, but is there some documentation of the successfulness of what's transpired in special ed, say just in the last 5 years? What something that I've been, the big question I always have in doing the budget and talking about special ed is we spend a large sum of money in special ed, and what classifies as being successful for each individual student? How does society, how does the law, how do we evaluate whether or not that money is wisely spent for these students?
The bottom premise for special education, what it is our goal at all times, is to provide services that eventually will allow students to learn strategies and compensatory skills so that they can be in the regular classroom setting as much as possible and as independent as possible. But that is definitely related to the degree of disability that a student has, and there's no way to predict one way or another. It's not, there are no two children the same. And so it's a hard thing to put your finger on. I can't say we had 700 students in special ed this year, and we were able to reduce that number by this number because they were able to exit from special education, because a whole bunch comes up right behind them. It's a never-ending flow of children.
My larger concern, though, is not necessarily the concern of at the primary and secondary school levels. My larger concern is what is the success for these students in their adult life? I mean, that's what I want to know. That's what I want to measure. That's what I want to know, the government and the powers that be are measuring how successful this is.
Yes.
How well
Yeah.
these students are going to do as adults. And is there data? Is there?
Well, the state
Yes.
sends out a survey to every student within a year of their graduation to find out what they're doing. Their return rate is minuscule. Most of the kids don't respond. They're looking at now the districts to go chase down these kids. And that's going to be interesting to see how we're going to do that. But the theory is that when we when students leave the public school district, no matter what their disability is, the theory is that to their ability, they'll either go into a post-secondary program, whether it's college or vocational technical school, or they'll go into employment, or they'll be able to do those plus independent living. Some of our children are so disabled they'll be in sheltered work situations. Some of them will be wonderful and they'll graduate from college and have a degree and be very highly productive members of society. The only way that we can collect data is if the students respond to the state survey, and they're not. I think they get about a 25% response rate.
And you'll let us digest that, grace us with your presence next month?
We'll try, yes.
I have a question for you. Beth? Program review PPTs?
Yes,
So a parent can ask as often,
correct.
what's an average? I mean, can you, was it all over the place?
I don't know that I can give you an average, Paul, because some parents want one every couple of months and some parents never want one.
Okay.
So I can't really, it wouldn't be fair to give you an average. It really depends on the family.
Is it your feeling, though, that this is basically a controllable situation? That this is not, I assume this is state mandated?
Yes.
Giving, that's not being abused, and that in itself is not a major drain on resources?
It can be, but it's not, in the greater scheme of things, no, it's
Okay.
not.
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
And there's one last piece I put into this packet. You asked, what do school psychologists do? I gave you a complete and total description of what school psychologists do.
Item D, summary of staff.
Okay, in your packet,
You're not gonna
you
read it to us,
received,
are you? Pardon? You're not going to read it all to us, are you?
what's a word page? We'll see if we can pronounce every name. In your packet, I think Mr. Kisco alluded to it, and it should complement the fine presentation that my fellow administrator did here on my right. This goes over every staff member in every building at the various schools. After talking with administrators and Board of Ed members, we came up with this format for you. The first column shows the administrator in the building or administrators. Second column, the teachers and what their assignment is. I didn't bog you down with full-time, part-time, although I did note where a teacher is shared or they are part-time, and that's designated by FTE. So that's there for you. I gave you a list of the paraprofessionals operating in each building, the custodians operating in each building, the secretaries, and the nurse. There is a column on the last page which shows Midgeon Avenue that is other, but you have an accounting of every person in every building on a given day. You'll see some of the names more than once, and that's because in some cases we share an individual between buildings in order to keep things as efficient as possible. So I think one of the things that stands out was unintended, but it kind of gives you a good visual of the ratio of administrator to staff in our buildings. And when we hear that we're administratively top-heavy, I think this this particular format shows very clearly that, for example, at the East School, on any given day, the principal of that building is responsible for not only the students in her building, but it also has at any one time 43 teachers, 21 paras, 3 custodians, 2 secretaries, and a nurse. That's one administrator. It gets even more cumbersome when you get to the high school. It shows the administrator and the list of the teachers that are working in that building, as well as the support staff. So I think this is another way, and I do thank the board members and the administrators that provided some help with what this looks like. This happens to be a snapshot that we took toward the end of September, and much like Dr. Robin explained, it's somewhat fluid, particularly when you're talking about paraprofessionals. Less so with teachers once we're up and running, but some minor changes here and there based on schedule, particularly with those paraprofessionals. So to spare, as Ken says, the pain of me reading this, it does give you a kind of a snapshot overview of what our buildings look like with some minor changes here and there as we move forward on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you.
Are special ed resources, is that just the special ed teacher?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, the terminology in the teacher's assignment is the one that we provide the state for each of those, yeah.
Any other questions at this time, Mr. Johnson?
I just have an observation, maybe it's correct, maybe it's not, which is when you start looking at these schools, you have grade 1 teacher, grade 2, grade 4, 5th grade teacher, and you got maybe 20 of them in a building such as Ford's. And then you look at the list of support staff, special ed people, just that area. And it's approximately like half. And then you go paraprofessionals included. I think I'm kind of shocked to think that teachers aren't necessarily even the majority of paid professionals in a building.
Oh, but they are. Because if you look at East School,
Okay.
there are 43 in column B. Those 43 bodies in that building. If you're looking at the paraprofessionals, you're looking at 22. Are you talking about adding paras, custodians, secretaries, and nurses?
I get, excluding the paraprofessionals line, just
Yeah.
looking under teachers, and I'm shocked that you, like I say, you have 20 who are first, second, third, fifth
Okay.
grade teachers.
Classroom
and then,
teachers.
And then you go, and then from 20 to 44 is all of these specialists. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just kind of shocked to think that you have more specialists than you actually have classroom
Well,
teachers. People
yeah.
are doing other functions than just being
Correct.
the old traditional teacher in front of 20
We
students.
provide an awful lot of services, Mr. Nargi, than just what goes on in the classroom. The support services that Dr. Robin was talking about being mandated, art, music, gym, library media, you know, again, the special ed resource. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And if it were simply putting a teacher in a classroom, certainly it would look very different, but that's not the reality.
And it's going more and more in that direction.
Well-
More and more specialists, more and more support staff.
If we're trying to provide comprehensive education and you know, the state is telling us that we have to provide X, Y, and Z, then yeah.
There's also, if you were looking at East, there's also 2 special education programs.
District-wide program.
District-wide programs there.
Yes.
So.
And the
it's
other thing-
Not just serving children in East, but children throughout the district.
Plus the more kids we keep in district.
Correct.
the more
That was what I was
services
gonna
we're
say.
need to provide at the
Did,
building level.
Did anybody notice that I left out BoE at my school? It didn't print in your packet, so I'm gonna pass that around now.
I have.
And I'll send it
I've got
electronically. Was it in your packet?
Yeah.
Never mind, don't waste the paper then. It wasn't in my packet. You have BoE? All right, good. I won't have to get after anybody.
So it's fair to say, based on following up, Andrew, it's fair to say that about, I mean, a general rule of thumbs, it's about 50-50 then, right? What you would consider regular ed classroom instruction versus that, what we call bucket of services for all the kids who are not traditional education. But it looks to be about, I mean, it's looking about 50, and that's not even counting the paraprofessionals. Because if you throw those into the special needs categories,
but there's a difference there, that there's full-time people and there's part-time people. And you'll see, for example, at East School, the psychologist is a .3 full-time equivalent. We don't have a full-time psychologist there. The social worker is a .5. So while the teachers are full-time, when you see the whatever FTEs, those are support staff, so they're not necessarily full-time people. I just wanted to give you the whole picture.
And they're all
So you have
certified
portions.
teachers. They all work with students. They work with many of the people who fit into that other 50% work with both special education and general education students. So it wouldn't be fair to say they're staff that are dedicated entirely to the needs of special education students.
In one part that wasn't marked was the math specialist, and she goes to all 5 elementary schools.
She's in there.
She's listed.
That's a
Right, but-
.2.
Okay, well, at East, she's there full-time. So,
Oh,
sorry.
okay, it should be a .2 next
Yeah,
to her
I don't
name.
see it.
You'll see a .2 in the other buildings. We have more than one court.
And just so you understand that the .3 psychologist, she's .3 at another school, and she's .4 at the third school. So she's covering 3 elementary schools right now.
That's just a snapshot. I mean, it just goes to when every spring when we come up with our budget, and people are in an uproar of why we're spending $64 million on public education system compared to when they were kids. This is the snapshot in some way that they never truly understand and appreciate. That, you know, my old chestnut is that we do education plus an awful lot of social services now that never used to occur a generation ago. And there's your huge, you know, added expense.
So as you're digesting this information, I'm open to email questions if you have any questions, or we can return to it next meeting if you want specifics on any of these positions. Yep.
Okay, that is also included in your packet. Each year we are required, we are required by the state to do a parent survey. We put them out there electronically, paper form. This year we even had parent volunteers who were handing them out at the Thursday Main Street markets. They had a little table, the parents hadn't completed them through the schools. That we were very interested in getting the information back, and still we received a limited amount back. You see the questions, we keep it simple. There are 8 questions that we ask, and it's a survey, and we just want to know, what are people thinking, and to provide some feedback. So it's expectations for my child's work, expectations for my child's behavior, communication between the school and the client. If they feel that the teacher knows their child, does the child feel safe at school? Because in order to be a learner, you have to be able to take risks, and if you don't feel safe, you can't take risks. And do we offer adequate program choices? And does the administration get back? Because all of this will be part of our future teacher and administrator evaluation pieces. And then if I am satisfied with my child's goal. And those are the percentages. Shelley?
How were these distributed at the schools?
They were offered during spring parent conferences. They were offered that parents could complete them on a computer at that time. They were given out in paper form, both in English and Spanish. And at the spring parent conferences, teachers actually, asked, reminded parents, you can fill this out. It was on our website.
Now, are the parents identified when they fill out the survey? How do we know that they're actual parents of the public school?
Yes, we asked them to complete which school, check off school. I know there was a question that came up from a parent at Forbes because it was sent out, but it was locked, it's locked off. You have to check one school that your child's attending.
But anybody
So,
can check any
anyway,
box.
yeah.
There's no proof that they're actually
No,
parents of students.
We got 14% back. Last year we had under 10, this year we had 14, so.
And yet 22% say that the school provides, they disagree that the school provides timely communication regarding school events.
And that could be one parent on 22 times.
So you're saying the number of respondents was 14% of the potential, 14%. I was going to say it's pretty favorable. I'm pleased that everybody seems to be neutral to strongly agree, and it's all pretty positive.
Yeah, we were.
But then I'm not happy that's only 14%.
I know, you know.
Is it also possible that if you take the parents who are showing up for the parent-teacher, I mean, in 10 years of my experience, parents who show up for the parent-teacher conferences tend to be the involved parents to begin with, and they tend to be more satisfied. You take the parents who are going online and looking at the school activities and checking out what's going on tend to be the involved parents and more satisfied with the results. I mean, it seems like the survey is skewed toward parents who have a predisposition to be involved in the school and therefore more satisfied. It just seems like there's an awful lot of parents, the same parents that we always have problems with to begin with, are not even filling out this form, and so I'm not sure what this tells us.
Just speaking from the elementary schools, they do have a good parent turnout, you know, like in the
Yeah.
90% or
Yeah,
above
yeah.
for parent conferences. So what we received from the elementary schools.
And I'm sure it skews that way too, because I mean, that tracks everything we know, which is that we do really well there, and then by middle school they're dropping out, and.
Well, we are open to any suggestions on how to reach the parents even better. Really, and I mean that seriously.
I know you do.
We'd like to get all of them.
Yeah, and based on these results, even if you want to take that conclusion that if you're involved and you see how things work as a parent, then you see that that the school system will work for you, but you have to be involved as a parent. And that goes to your point. How do you get more parents to realize if they're involved, then their expectations and their child will do better, just based on their involvement? I mean, I understand it's pretty obvious, but let's say it anyway.
Okay, thank you. Moving on.
This will be a parent survey, student survey, will be part of teacher evaluations and the new teacher evaluation plan.
How hard is it to do
In
this?
some form, in some form.
How hard is it to do it? So maybe if you did them like every month, you'd get more and more parents participating.
So offering it more than once a year.
Yeah, like get them August, September, October, and you just would, I think if parents start seeing that they're more involved and they have their voice, that they will become more active.
Yeah, no, it's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Can I just clarify, you said part of teacher evaluation?
We'll be giving you a rundown on the new part of education reform, teacher evaluation process. It's very different than
So
how
the
it's
survey
always
will be part of their evaluation?
has to be. 5%.
We need to work on the survey.
Well, yeah, and the distribution of it,
Well,
because
this-
really, that's ridiculous.
Okay, number F, letter F, not number F. In order to start a advanced or an earlier scheduling process, the school system has taken on trying to get us actual schedule before we go into budget. So we have a better idea of number of sections needed and actual number of teachers instead of a projection. In order to do that, the software that we use needs a schedule. knowing that this schedule potentially could change when we try to match it to the state schedule to save on busing whenever that comes out in the spring. This is basically just a tentative schedule to say, this is our schedule till we know different from the state. We just need to pass it so that they can start. Motion approved. Second. Discussion. Okay.
Discussion is, I would, as a board member, like to know that sooner than later, this is presented to the TEA chairperson and have her run it through the faculty and get, I'd like to have a formal recommendation that they accept this so that we don't go through this.
But it's most likely going to change.
Well, that being understood, still get there.
The calendar or the?
This calendar, because we're gonna approve a calendar year at the board level. And it's, so as not to hear teachers into the future saying, why did you vote this way or that way? And then I go, sorry, I didn't even know that was an issue. They could present those issues to us as the board, and for us as the board to directly hear what their issues are, so that we know that we're on the same page.
And don't forget that the way the calendar is designed is so that we run the same calendar as all the local technical school does to save on transportation.
Okay.
Okay, so that's, no, that's why it's formulated.
We're just, if they change it, we're going to end up having to change it. That's all. Yes.
I'm voting not to approve this, and I want to explain why. I feel that it's premature for us to be even looking at a calendar at this point, and if we're looking at it for scheduling purposes at the high school, I'm pretty confident that the students go for 185 days every year, regardless of what days they are. I don't know how that impacts us setting a calendar early that we know is not going to end up being the final calendar. We set a schedule, so I would like to see us use some, for lack of a better word, common sense as far as the number of days that students actually attend school, and we base a schedule based on the number of days the kids are going to be at the high school.
Sure. You're right.
Policy does dictate that we do a calendar 2 years in advance, and that we run it by both PTO and staff for input. I believe the calendar, as it kind of pertains to the schedule, has to do with being able to put the parameters into the scheduling software for semesters and.
Right. The power schedule just requires that dates be inputted in order to set the terms to count out the number of days that students have to attend school per state law. So that, and those change when there's snow days and other interruptions to the schedule because the students have to attend 180 days minimum. But it's just, at this point, we have to have a starting point, so the board's been given the courtesy to acknowledge that this is the date that will be entered as the working date for the beginning of the school year, so the terms can be set in the software so that we can begin to start the scheduling process.
So what you actually only need is a start date?
Pretty
So
much.
you only want, so we say it starts September 1st, and then you can just do your preliminary schedule from there.
Which is not a given, because some
Well, which is
boards
not a given,
elect to
but-
start before Labor Day and after
Well,
Labor
we
Day.
could hypothetically
Right.
say the last Wednesday in August, because it's been the last Wednesday
That's the
in
way it's
August.
over. It's been.
Right. So you just need, it's just a
Date to start.
courtesy to have us be aware of that. Not that we have to approve a full schedule.
That's correct.
Just give you a date, a guideline to in order to
Set the terms.
Set the terms, okay.
And that being said, I kind of felt that the teachers weren't always happy with that start. I don't want to articulate to them why they weren't happy, but I, as a board member, would like to know that that start date gets the blessing from the DEA. That's just my feeling.
But I don't think we're setting a calendar, they're just
Start
doing
date.
no, We're just giving them an arbitrary start date so they can do schedules to see how it's gonna look to test it. That's my understanding.
Is that correct? It's an arbitrary date.
The policy dictates, we don't have a lot of leeway anyway, that school will begin either the last week or the second to the last week in August. Those are our only choices by your policy. So it's pretty well dictated.
Mr. Chair, it's my understanding that this is simply a software programming error where they need something to put into the computer for their computer to function to do their scheduling. So I would like to just move this forward to a vote if possible.
Okay. Item's been moved. All those in favor of approving the schedule of the 2013 school calendar year as a placeholder? Signify by saying aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? We have 3 opposed. It's moved. Okay. Item G, Board of Education goals. We're supposed to set these at the beginning of the school year so that we have something to evaluate the progress of the school district. 3 meetings in a row I've asked for them. I've gotten 4 responsive, none. If you can take these that are here, select what you consider to be your top 5, because we have to have 4 goals. Well, traditionally we've had 4 goals to put before the superintendent for the way we'd like to see the school district move. And if we can have that, please, by next month, or leadership will have to pick 4 off the list and move forward. So this is just to give to you to think about it, put on there what you want, email it back. This will be our 3rd request for this, and if you could.
While we're here and while we have everyone here, concern of mine is always evaluation. As a board member of what the school district is doing as a whole, but that being said, we personally as board members only evaluate the superintendent. I'd like to somehow create in our goal more of an understanding of our relationship with the superintendent so as to have more dialogue and a collection of data and what we consider as important data to measure how we feel the school district is either improving or not improving, and then tie it to ultimately our evaluation of the superintendent. But I don't necessarily feel that this is, I'm looking at this as our evaluation agreement with the superintendent, just more of a working ability as board members to get more data, to be more inquisitive of what's going on in the buildings, in the district, without it coming back as, Mr. Nargi, you're being evaluated of this person, you're being evaluated of that person. More of an understanding maybe of where the boundaries are of what we can request for information, what we can publicly discuss at these board meetings, so as to better inform ourselves of what the district needs are, where the improvements are. That's a goal that I've had for 5 years, because we always get caught up with the same situation of how do you get data, how do you collect things. Okay.
Yeah, my 2 cents, this is extremely important. I mean, this pretty much drives where we're going to go for the next 7 or 8 months, whatever it is. And I think this should be an agenda item on the next meeting, okay, as an action item, establish more goal, boom, and we devote a lot, a serious amount of time. I mean, it's extremely important work that the board,
I couldn't agree more. I've been trying to do it for 3 months. I can't
Put it
get
on the
anybody to
agenda.
give us that.
Put it
Well,
on the
we've
agenda.
got to have something. If we all just walk in and just start firing ideas out, we're gonna be here for like 3 days. The thought process is if we all have the comment, if we know what everybody's thinking, then you can, we can narrow the field from 200 questions or 200 possible goals down to 10, and we can discuss those 10. But right now, I've only got 7, so I'm kind of light on options.
Well, what does the board think, Ken? I mean, make amends, or everybody should submit 5.
Everybody for 5
in the next week to you.
I've asked for that.
Okay, I make a motion that the Board of Education members be required to submit 5 goals to the chairman of the board within the next week by email.
I'll second it, but on the condition that there were board members who have already done that. So,
yes.
Thank you.
Resubmit them. I mean, just resubmit them. So he's got.
Resend me your email.
I'll be more than happy to. Thank you, Ken.
And I would like.
Can we get a vote on that?
Well, is there any other
discussion?
I'd like to say that what I've said is my recommendation formally to the board. It'll be documented.
Type it and
No,
send it.
put it in writing. I
don't care. I'll give you the 47 cents for a stamp if you need it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I just say one thing, a discussion about my own motion? Sure. From having those many years. Look, and the goals have got to be actionable, okay? Well, this is what we're asking our administration to do. So it's got to be something that's actually doable with real measurable results. It can't just be a vague sort of thing. It's got to be, what are we specifically asking them to accomplish by June 30? I mean, that's really what we're saying. So 5 of them. So.
And be realistic, because a quarter of the year is gone.
Yes, sir.
We've already let a quarter of the time pass by. And I can't ask them to rebuild Rome. I'm sorry.
To just move, so I like one other point is that, for instance, on these going forward, for instance, in my personal opinion, member number 2 said, place a time limit on discussion during votes at a board. That's not a board goal, okay? That's a board agenda item, and we can certainly discuss. That's not a board goal, okay? Expand the online learning program for the purpose. Expanding a program that already exists is not really a board goal. If the board wants to do that, you put an agenda item, and it becomes a budgetary issue, but it's not a goal. Providing a unified, all-encompassing analysis of the high school, yeah, that's a goal. So anyway, I'll shut up. But it's got to be actionable. It's got to be truly a goal, and not something that the board owns. It's got to be something that the administration, that the board directs the administration to do. Now I'll shut up.
All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. State assessment testing protocol. Oh, that's me.
This is a question that came at the last board meeting.
Yes, sir.
And,
This is where we are. It's an update on whatever happened about that.
right,
Yes. We have a letter here from the state, or from CAPS, that says, I exchanged email messages on this situation with the staff from the Atlanta newspaper in which the first story appeared. The people who did the investigation for the newspaper simply looked for situations in which there was an increase in test scores that was large in comparison to previous years. These people did not go any further in their investigation. So unless there's evidence to the contrary, it is reasonable to conclude that any increases cited are the result of students achieving at a higher level than had been the case in the past. I'm just reading it. I didn't write it. Okay? I'm just reading it. The CSDE decided that improvement in test scores increases CSDE decided that improvement in test score increases, absent any evidence that it is not legitimate, was no basis for any action on the part of the CSDE. So in other words, other than somebody saying the test score went up a lot, there's no other evidence, they're not doing an investigation. As far as they're concerned, the test scores are what they are, and we're moving forward. And they've looked into the situation and found no evidence of wrongdoing. They said, actually, it says, tell the entire BOE that we've looked into the situation and found no evidence of wrongdoing.
And just to be clear, who is that from, Mr. Chairman?
This is from Joseph
Cirasulo,
Executive Director of the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents.
and they worked directly with
He was working with CSDE to battle that accusation that came back of all the other towns in Connecticut that were dealing with the same thing.
And the second paragraph is the important part.
Yes. There was a newspaper article that came out that said that the federal government has no standards to protect the integrity of the achievement tests it requires in tens of thousands of public schools. And that test security among the states is so inconsistent that Americans can't be sure those all-important test scores are legitimate. The newspaper surveyed the 50 state education departments and found that many states do not use basic test security measures designed to prevent cheating, and that nearly half the states the newspaper found make almost no attempt to screen the test results for irregularities. So, as they found out, like the example that was used was, Kentucky can have one person just collect them all up, they go in a shoebox, they sit in a closet, they're not even looked at, or in some school districts, they were actually left in the teacher's care on the desk, and at the end of the week, everything got collected up. There was no, Connecticut has a standard, but a lot of states don't have a standard. So when they started comparing these irregular test results around the country, they found out that there's really no way to say, well, it's kind of a free-for-all. A lot of areas had their own way of dealing with it, not necessarily standardized.
This is why you're looking at states going to the Common Core state standards and the same assessments from state to state.
Yep. Yep.
And why it's going on, like, on a computer.
Understood. Thank you.
On our next agenda item was, last month we brought up the concept of changing around the way we've done business for years and looking at doing individualized work groups instead of the set structure of subcommittees that we had. They said we would think on it, come back this month with any suggestions, thoughts. Anybody have any further thoughts, suggestions, criticisms? John?
I was just waiting to hear what policy was going to do with this, because I think you had suggested that policy talk about this at their next meeting, which won't be till next week.
Well, yeah, but we brought it back here just to, it would have to be a bylaw change, it would have to be,
right.
But do we want them to look into it, I guess is the question. Furthermore, more.
You're asking me for my opinion. I don't see any reason policy shouldn't look at this. Talk about it. That's a recommendation perhaps to the whole board.
No. I think some committees will find to change something that isn't broken.
Looking forward to discussing it in policy.
I'll discuss in policy. I am leaning, giving it more thought. I'm leaning toward Chris and agree. I think there is a place for the personnel committee, and I think, I just think there's a place for it. And without getting personal, Mr. Chairman, again, having done this for a long time, every board and every board member has got to really think about future boards. And when you start tinkering with bylaws and with the skeleton of what has been in place for a long time, you really got to be careful, because that's what you're handing off. That becomes past, what we do here becomes past practice for the next board, okay? And we set a precedent, and it's remarkable what a long dinosaur's tail that has in terms of consequences of how boards go about their decision-making process. It's a lot of words, but what it means is, if we do away with these, they will be away for a long time. And what it does do, and this is my concern, and again, this has nothing to do with Mr. Trout, what it does do is it concentrates the power in your executives, because the rest of the board, the whole point, and I was very proactive in putting in place, when I was chair of putting in place subcommittees, and I empowered the subcommittees a lot. We always call it a committee-driven board, and I realized they're awkward, and I realized that there are problems with the way they're structured now, with not being able to meet. I realized there are problems with it. But what it also did is, in my mind, is my personal opinion, is it democratized it. I always saw the board as being 10 people really working out the problems as a group and being aware of what other people were doing all at the same time. And my fear is that with these isolated action groups, I think in a community like the one that the lawyer who made the presentation, I think in a more homogeneous community, less diverse community, that's what I'm trying to say, without many kinds of problems that we have here, I think it's far easier, because I think you have more common mind think about people on the board about what they need to do within their communities to advance their communities. We've got so many issues that involve education, that involve non-education, that involve health, that involve safety, that involve blah, 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 blah. if everybody's going off in different directions, it does tend to feel like we're adrift, and then we get into situations, we found that out at a meeting tonight, in an executive session, where because of not, everybody not being on the same page, having different information flow, it was very, very difficult to come to a decision, quite frankly. And I think so. I think those subcommittees flatten it out. In terms of staffing them, maybe fewer staff members, so that if you have only 3 on a subcommittee, then only 2 is required for a quorum. Maybe they don't have to meet every month. They meet on an as-needed basis. You know, maybe school improvement doesn't have to meet every month. That's when there's something that school improvement needs to be working on. If a particular chairman of a subcommittee, like a school improvement committee, has a time limitation, then it's up to that committee to take himself off as chairman in good faith and allow somebody else to take over the chairmanship of that. You know, or it's the chairman's duty to remind that subcommittee chair that you know he's just not doing the job as needed, and somebody else should be doing it. So I'm trying to separate out personal performance in a subcommittee structure versus the subcommittee structure itself. So I'm leaning toward it, but I do think, and I know there's been a lot of thought in that, and I know there's a lot of positives to what you're saying, Ken, in terms of being quick to response, which is another thing. I'm weighing all that, and I would like to vet it out in policy. I really would, but that's where my thinking is going right now.
I'm always willing to take a look at something, so it's fine to send it to policy. I do think the subcommittee structure works as a whole, so I wouldn't want to see it decimated. However, I do see a point to having a work group option for more specialized topics and subjects that come up that don't really fall into a standard category.
Okay, I'm totally opposed to the subcommittees. I have been since I've been on the board. I don't find them to be efficient. I don't find them to be a good way for a board of 10 to operate. It causes different groups to have more information and other people to be without that information. And I understand that all board members can attend all of these subcommittee meetings, but at the end of the day, if you're going to attend all the subcommittee meetings, then you might as well just have the entire board meet at all the meetings. And the other thing that I like the concept of the work groups. It allows board members to potentially think a little more on their own, and then to come before the chair and the board to articulate a goal or an objective that they would like to explore with other board members to try to find some answers or solutions. So I think that's a good concept as well. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
So you'd like to see it go to policy?
Yes.
Can I have one more thing, Mr. Chairman? Just this is something that he's brought up many times before, and maybe as part of this discussion, maybe in policy, because this is another thought process I had. If you were to do away with some of these subcommittees, I think a counterbalance, and again, I know everybody's initial response goes, oh, please no, but it may be a more effective tool if you had 2 meetings a month, which is what we used to do, okay? One meeting more designed toward discussion and analysis, and one toward making decisions. You know, first meeting is discussion analysis, you know, you roll out the data. The second meeting in a month, typically shorter, is everybody's had a chance to see the data, think about it. 2 weeks later, you come, now you're voting on that stuff. And then you don't, so what would typically be run through School Improvement Committee would simply be part of the twice a month meetings. You know, an awful lot of maybe some of the things that happen in budget, some of the discussions that happen in policy, an awful lot of that may be doable in 2 meetings, and people are not, so instead of going to, again, your subcommittees as often as you are, you're simply doing the Wednesday meetings, you know, structured around discussion analysis, one, and then 2 weeks later. I mean,
I think you just made Andrew fall off his chair.
Well,
He's been asking for that for...
yeah,
Right, I like that whole
it's
concept.
something to think about, and it would be great if we had, if we rolled that into discussion. No?
I think since everyone's all over the place,
Yeah.
we should move into policy to have a thorough discussion about
Yeah,
it.
and everybody please come to policy, right?
Come to policy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're
We'll
all
move it to
welcome.
policy.
The beauty of the subcommittee structure reveals itself.